Alright, what you're supposed to do is not to build them next to each other. That's it. I'm just kidding. Hello and welcome to my 2K subscriber special, Engie's building placement and rollout guide. If it isn't obvious by now, I am an engineer main, being one since 2021, and ever since then I've played him for nearly 800 hours and he's just that fun. I also like how I used to log. I went with a more casual style, but now I'm wearing this all white winter loadout. But one of the biggest difficulties in learning engineer is figuring out where to spread out your stuff and how to do his rollouts effectively during the beginning of the round. It may seem like I am the cool engie man who knows every spot and rollout, but frankly I am this barely functioning idiot who just happened to fill his brain with info about engineer instead of sounding more productive. But hey, I guess it's about time I share this engie brain rot with you. But before we start, I want to point out that due to TF2 having like 100 maps, I'll not go into detail about different spots and strategies in each map, but more as a short example about good spots to build in. I also want to say that it has been quite hard to put in the wars, as I originally was just going to show normal gameplay on where to build, but that's boring and will be in no way interesting enough for a special video. So I want to apologize beforehand if some parts sound rambling or contradictory, as again, it's hard to put this into words. I also want to clarify that this is how I like to place my buildings and do the rollouts. They might not be the best options available, but they have served me quite well, and hey, maybe you might learn something new as well. Alright then, those out of the way, let's get to engineering. Rollouts are one of the most stressful parts of learning to be an engineer, as you need to get your stuff up under a strict time limit or with no preparation time at all. But once you get the hang of them, it becomes a cakewalk. How I do it is quite effective, but can fail if your team doesn't have the decency to lift the ammo packs during setup. And yes, soldier, I am sure you needed that one extra ammo from rocket jumping, thank you very much. For an effective rollout, you're going to need Eureka Effect, the best tool for this. Then, if you want a more convenient way to set up your stuff, I recommend setting up different building binds. I have set my mouse's side buttons for Dispenser and Sentry, 5 and 6 for teleporters, and I'll make sure to put the bind in the description below if you want to try it for yourself. I would also recommend setting up loadout binds, as it makes switching weapons faster. I haven't personally set them up, as it's such a hassle to set up my Dungeon E slot, and I have run out of places to bind the loadouts in, as my keyboard doesn't have a numpad. So once a round starts, I set up my entrance, and because dispensers are usually very important, I set it down second. Then I move over to the point or objective. I pick up a medium to huge ammo pack along the way to just have enough metal for my 2 final buildings. I then set the exit and sentry in place, teleport back to the base and start whacking my teleporter to level 3. Then I like to keep a small distance with my dispenser where I can hit it, but it won't give me any metal, so I can save it for the beginning of the round. I then grab the dispenser, teleport to my building spot, place the dispenser down, and usually have enough time to build my sentry to level 2 before round starts, as level 2 is good enough to defend as well. Usually this really depends on the map, as I have found Mountain Lab and Gold Rush the hardest maps to do this effectively, as these maps have quite awkward ammo pack placements in the first point. I do this rollout pretty much every time, even in modes like King of the Hill and Capture the Flag. It just means that you have to do things slightly faster, as you really want to be there to support your team. But once you get the hang of it, it comes out naturally. Now let's talk about the building placements. The main thing when placing buildings down is that you need to remember to not be that turtle engine who builds all his stuff next to each other. Sure, you're pretty safe in there from lone heavies and pyros, but just a few stickies or rockets is enough to bring them all down. Ideally, you want to spread them around so it takes more effort from the enemy to destroy them all. Let's take a look at the flashes option first, the Sentry gun. You would want your sentry to cover a great area but not too great that enemies can snipe it from far away. Like here in Up for Second, this sentry spot is literal perfection. It defends a big enough area but isn't easily taken down either. And you can nicely keep it up as well. But there are certain exceptions to this rule, such as Pathfinder's First has engineers building in a spot where there's a big cycline, but this spot is usually fine as enemies need to put themselves at risk of being killed by your team. You should treat your sentry like a planet, as you need that Goldilocks zone to thrive. If the planet is too far away from the sun, it will freeze the liquid, like how my bank account froze after buying a huge supply of Fumos, but if it's too close to it, it simulates how it felt to play TF2 when Jungle Inferno was released. Building too far away will just make the sentry glorified statue, while building too close to the enemy means it won't last long. So keep this in mind when deciding where to build. If the area is just big enough where the enemies can snipe it from afar but it covers something, then that is the right spot. Like in Masrock's first point, it offers a nice cover from the snipers but also has a good view into the point, so your sentry actually has a use. In offense, having a sentry in a certain choke where the defensive team can just steamroll you can be beneficial, but being more aggressive has its own benefits too. With mini sentries it doesn't really matter where you place them as they're built to be replaced, but you do want at least to place them in a spot where it can harass the enemy. If your team can hold the enemies off and protect your other buildings, so you go try and sneak over to the enemy's side and place the sentry in a spot where it definitely hurts. Like here in Bumble's third point, if you manage to build your sentry in a third story building, it usually forces the enemies to stop shooting your team and target you, or if you're lucky and they don't notice you, then you know what happens. By far my favorite strategy is to set up a sentry in Pathfinder's last. It's not easy to pull off, but man, when it works, it's a game changer. To pull it off, you need to rocket jump into this roof here, rescue ransom your sentry there. If the enemy has their sentries down and don't notice yours, sneak over to that small spot and teleport your sentry there and just watch as chaos unfolds. What's also pretty important to keep in mind is that if your sentry spot doesn't work, don't be ashamed to move it to a better location. Your sentry is pretty important to keep the enemies away, and if it goes down, well, you know what happens then. I'll show some sentry locations in different popular maps.
Wunderbar! Alrighty then!
Next up, my favorite building, the Dispenser. You can tell a good engineer from a Pathfinder the way they treat it. You would always like to build a dispenser where it's safe from the gunfire, but also isn't too far away from your teammates to use it. Like here in Viaduct, you have two choices to build it, but it's usually the most convenient to build it behind this wall as you can easily access it and so can your team as well. But do remember, this thing isn't your personal medic, as it's the second most reliable healing source after medic and those guys are quite rare. So if you want your teammates to potentially help to defend your stuff, share it. But do consider building it in a spot where it also isn't too much of an inconvenience for you to use it as well. I make this mistake many times as I always want to share a dispenser with others, but then I have to risk my life to even reach it. Like in this example, Upward's first point has two spots where you go build. This one spot is more active but has that problem where if the enemy is pushing it can potentially harm you. But this dispenser is in a spot where there's a medkit, so it might feel a bit pointless to build it in there, but it's at least more convenient for you to use. So honestly, this really depends on the game. If the enemy isn't too aggressive, build it where your team has faster access to it, but if the enemy is tougher, just make sure that you can keep it up, as building one backup is low and not having any reliable metal source can become your downfall. In rare specific cases, it is okay to have it to yourself, like in Dustball's last point. If the enemy is rather aggressive with their pushes and you need to keep that sentry up no matter the cost, it's okay to be selfish and hog the dispenser, or in Upward's last where the enemies tend to destroy it if he is behind a wall, so you can build one on the upper floor and have it a slightly easy time defending the last point. But in most cases you should share it with your team and not be a selfish asshole. Dispensers can also work as a parry gate, but it's not the best use for it. Like I have only seen it work at Touhou Fort in your spawn area, and even to me it feels like a waste. But hey, if you want to make that punk scout's life harder, feel free to do so. I'll now show some dispenser locations. Teleporters, my least favorite building. It's not because they're bad, but because enemies have a nasty habit of sneaking to my spawn and destroying the entrance. And level 3 teleporters are game changing, so it feels annoying to always upgrade them if this happens. But you came here for building tips, not to hear my personal gripes with flankers. Teleporters are one of the hardest buildings to find a good spot for, as building one too far away from the objective takes your team longer to get back to the action, but building it too close can get it destroyed and force your team to just walk that entire way. So, how to know if the teleport is in a good spot? Well, that would mean I would have to give up my teleporter secrets, and there's no way I am doing that. Just kidding. You won't want it to be behind a wall or a corner, but also where your team can conveniently go back to the battlefield. Like here in Lakeside under the fort, the enemy usually doesn't go this far as it's a nasty joke and it faces the exits that leads to the point. I also want to mention that you can rotate your teleporter with mouse too, and this arrow shows which side your teammates look at when exiting your teleporter. That way you can avoid making your teammates face the wall when they come out of the exit. It's also important to put it against the wall so spies can camp and kill your team easily, as you can really turn around for that small moment when you appear. But here's that exception again. Sometimes there isn't a wall to build against, so I will still build the tele as it's important for your team, but do keep an eye out if any person takes a weird liking for your teleporter. But here's a small secret. If the enemy happens to forget about your teleporter, you can destroy the entrance and just wait until they have pushed far enough where you can teleport behind them and become a ninja engineer. This isn't really helpful for your team, but hey, it's fun when it works. Teleporters are also really important during offense, but in case the defending team likes to push a lot, I recommend building slightly farther away from the front lines, as the enemy usually likes to hover in certain areas and not push too far from that. Like here in Mountain Lab, having it built just far enough that your team might have to walk a little more, but it means enemies have to risk their lives to destroy it. I also didn't find a good place to talk about this, but usually you want to keep your buildings relatively close to each other. Like if a spy decides to zap your teleporter and it's far away from you, it's usually gone. I like to keep them in a layout where Dispenser is just close enough to your Sentry where you can resupply and not risk getting shot, but also where you don't need to go too far away from them if your teleporters get zapped. Like here in Badwater third point where the exit is just close enough to you where if a spy happens to zap it, you can easily go over and remove it while not leaving your other stuff alone for too long. But if you happen to have Eureka equipped, you can keep your teleporter slightly further away from your nest, as you can teleport to exit being zapped, or if the entrance gets destroyed by some flanking scout, you can teleport to spawn, place it down and teleport back to inactive exit and upgrade it back to level 3. I'll now show you teleport spots.
Angie, I haven't been able to pick up Trash since you threw him into the rift. It appears he is still in this dimension, but for some reason I can't log onto him.
Heck yes!
And that's all I have to say about rollouts and building placements. While engineer building spots don't really change that much, it's just a matter of finding that right spot for them. I do hope you enjoyed this small guide of mine and learned some stuff, as again it was really tough to get my talks in the votes without this entire video being place them here and sit back, as that would have been quite boring. I also want to thank you all again for helping me reach 2000 subscribers in such a short amount of time, as I never thought I could reach this milestone so quickly. It does make me happy that people enjoy my work and share their own talks, and it's even an entirely different feeling when people recognize you in game and compliment you there. I also want to thank everyone who has helped me get this far. Huge thanks for people who has been there for me like Bookster and others who have enough patience to read my autistic ramblings. Hussercat who has drowned the art in my channel, TF2, Touhou and Ratchet and Clank communities who have been there to support me. And finally, you, the viewer, who decided to give this small robot a chance to prove his content isn't as trash as the name might suggest. Finally, I just want to thank you for watching and wish you a wonderful day.
Howdy, howdy.